So it doesn't really matter which helping modality or which cognitive train of thought you go on to study. Every life science generally has a set of core assumptions that it operates out of. All right? Whether you subscribe and buy into these assumptions is entirely up to you. All right? So I want to open up this video here, which is incidentally going to be looking at the core assumptions of cognitive behavioral therapy. By a quote from Mr. Aaron T. Beck, who I'll be introducing you to in a bit more depth in the videos that follow. Aaron T. Beck once said that the cognitive approach to looking at people helps us to realize how the quality of our thoughts impact how we relate to our everyday situations and experiences. We gain crucial insights that allow us to understand human behavior as a result. And I guess that what Aaron's saying here is that no thought, no feeling, no habit, no action, no behavior, no outcome stands alone in isolation. The cause and effect principle will always come into play. So here's the thing. We are going to be where we are at relationally, professionally, financially, in life at this stage for a reason. Now, we're all in this process of personal growth and development. Some people assume that the learning years for us in life stop the day that we leave school or the day that we leave higher education. And the truth of the matter is that the day that we stop growing and developing as human beings is the day that we start dying and regressing back into earlier stages of development. And sadly, this is an attitude that many people take towards life. So CBT, our mindset as cognitive behavioral therapists or aspiring cognitive behavioral therapists, is always going to be one of growth, operating from this growth mindset. How can I grow? How can I overcome? How can I improve? How can I be better? How can I become more valuable? How can I converse more articulately and more concisely so that more people understand me? How can I listen more effectively? How can I fundamentally be a better and more efficient version of me? Well, here's the thing. The attitude and the approach that we take towards life, towards our relationships, towards people, will always influence the outcomes that we go on to experience. And in the same way, the attitude and the core ideas or the assumptions that we operate out of as cognitive behavioral therapists is going to determine how effective we go on to become when working with other people or when helping people or serving them in some way. So what I want to share with you here are the 7 core assumptions of CBT. And there are many more than this, but these are the 7 main ones that I want to present you with. And I'm going to urge you to pause this video after each of these 7 points and just relate each of these ideas to yourself. All right? Just see how these ideas or these assumptions compare to your own current personal sets of beliefs, all right, your own outlook on life. Because this is how we grow, by comparing new ideas to existing ones, and then if the new ideas that we're being presented with are better than our old ones, then we ditch the old ones and embrace the new. Kind of like what we do every new year when we make New Year's resolutions, all right? We set goals and it's out with the old and it's in with the new. Well, how we grow and develop in life pretty much takes the same process. We've sometimes got to grow out of old beliefs, unhelpful attitudes, unhelpful behavioural patterns, and into more effective ones. But we can only do this once we're aware of what these more effective attitudes, ideas, behaviours, patterns are. So, one of the first core assumptions I want to discuss with you here in this dialogue is that people are processors of experience rather than passive victims of circumstance. Now, I'm going to share with you a framework in the videos that follow that's going to hopefully help you to really understand this in a bit more depth. But think about it. As human beings, we're all kind of meaning-making machines. It's not like anything, any circumstance, any situation in life has any meaning whatsoever until we assign meaning onto it. All right, there was a book that I read around about 8 or 9 years ago by an author named Viktor Frankl. And the book was called Man's Search for Meaning. Throughout this book, Viktor gave an account of his experience I think it was throughout the Second World War when he'd been imprisoned in some of the Nazi concentration camps. Now, throughout this 3.5 or 4 year season of life, he'd experienced torture, torment, he'd witnessed friends, loved ones, family members being tortured, executed. And throughout the whole experience, he asked this question: what could this mean? What could this mean? What could this mean? All right? He never determined what it meant, but instead what his experience could mean. He was always open to the world of possibility, because what many people do very, very quickly in life is have an experience, have an event, experience a hurt or a rejection, then assign a conclusion onto the event and then stick with it and don't change. And sometimes ignorantly assume that the way in which they see things is the way in which things actually are, which is very, very rarely the truth. The way in which we perceive things in life is just the way in which we perceive things, isn't always the way in which things actually are. And remember, two people can look at exactly the same situation, or could be looking at exactly the same mountain from two totally different angles and see two totally different things. Sometimes, in order for us to grow to our fullest potential, we've got to get good at looking at life, at our interpretations, our perceptions, our events, our experiences from multiple perspectives, so that we can arrive at more grounded and balanced perspectives and views. So here's the thing. We're going to be operating out of one of two mindsets, all right? That we are happening in life, or that life is happening to us, all right? If we are of the mindset that we are happening in life, then that means we're processors of experience. So granted, stuff's going to happen to us. We're going to take the highs with the lows, the ups with the downs, the wins with the failures, the acceptances with the rejections, and it's all just experience, all right? Life isn't so much about what happens to us, but rather it's about how we respond to those things that happen to us. Right? Granted, a whole load of stuff's going to happen to us in life, a lot of which we're not going to have any control over, but at all times and in all situations, we can control how we choose to respond. All right? When we're not operating from this mindset, we can sometimes end up believing or assuming that we're victims of circumstance. And when people operate from this mindset, it can leave them in a place of real disempowerment, feeling helpless, hopeless, out of luck, down in the dumps, like they're not actually capable of becoming the change that they want to see happen in their own lives. Now, remember, a person's education is going to massively influence how a person goes on to grow and develop. So as cognitive behavioural therapists, this is an assumption that we really want to be subscribing into, because what we go on to say and how we say what we say and the message that we go on to communicate with other people is always going to be reflective of that which we believe. So if we genuinely do subscribe to the idea that we are processors of experience, then what this means is that, yeah, granted, an experience can happen to us, and we might process this experience and say, this experience is bad and it means this about me. Well, that doesn't necessarily need to be the overriding one universal truth that applies to every single aspect of our life. And we've processed an experience in one way, but we can also process it in multiple other ways, which means there's most likely many perspectives that we haven't yet considered. And this is one of the key factors that can really allow us to become the conduits of change in other people's lives as CBT practitioners, not by changing them, not by changing their perspective, but instead by asking questions that simply provoke them to look at their life, their experiences, and life's events from alternative perspectives that differ from the ones that they've perhaps looked at in the past. So the second core assumption of CBT, and this is quite a big one, this one actually conflicts with many conventional therapies that exist today. People are not broken entities who need to be fixed. People just actually need to be understood. Now, this is a big one. I think I gave reference to the counsellor that I spoke with back when I was doing my a CBT and counselling trainings many, many years ago. Now, he operated from this mindset that people are broken. I think he had quite a religious upbringing. So people are sinners, people are broken, people need a Lord and a Saviour and a healer to come into their lives to fix them. Now, that might very well be the case. I guess we get to establish this truth the day that we die. But until then, we're actually going to be wiser to evaluate the health of our thinking and see whether our thinking and believing actually empowers us in life or disempowers us. Because if we are broken entities, if we are broken people, then what this is likely going to mean is that we need someone to come into our lives who will fix us. The attitude this can end up then provoking us to take in our relationships is one of need, where we actually need people to be a certain person for us. We need people to come through for us. We need people to be our rock, our substance. We need to know exactly where we stand with people pretty much all of the time. And in some instances, we actually need people to be perfect for us. And when they're not, this is not going to be okay. We'll end up hurt, disillusioned, rejected, saddened, and so on and so forth. But when people are not broken entities and don't need to be fixed, they just need to be understood, well, again, this provokes us then to ask slightly better questions, not just of ourselves, but also of the people that we're conversing with. So granted, a person might come to us from this place of, victimhood or victimness, with a victim mindset, being weighed down and crushed by their past life's events, and they can say, I'm no good at this, I'm useless, I've failed 10 times in the past, which means I'll never succeed in the future. And a person is always going to give reference to what they believe themselves to be capable of in the future as a response to that which they've experienced in the past. It's kind of like, people operate out of this mindset that the past equals the future. If a person has had a number of failures in the past, they can expect more failures in the future. But what this doesn't take into account for are the lessons that we learn along the way. So CBT can allow us or these core assumptions can just simply allow us to ask better questions of ourselves and of our clients to help them look for answers or look from angles, perspectives that they might not have previously considered. If people can learn unhelpful ways of thinking, they can also unlearn them equally as fast. Now, I think it was Albert Ellis, who mentioned this one of the first times. Now, people sometimes get trapped in their train of thought, in their way of thinking. Have you ever really gotten things wrong? Say, for example, you've been having a conversation with someone and they'll say something or do something and then you've just flown off the handle. You've gone on to react or respond in a completely inappropriate way, only to later realize that how you responded was completely inappropriate, totally unhelpful. In fact, you just went and made a complete fool of yourself. Well, you didn't make a fool of yourself, all right, when you start speaking out, all right, because what you spoke out was just a reflection of that which you assumed. All right, so here's the thing. Where people have the biggest problem in life generally is in their processing of experience, their interpretation of event. All right, now here's the thing. If people can learn unhelpful ways of thinking, they can also unlearn them equally as fast and therefore learn something better. Now, give you another example of this. When I grew up, through my teenage years, I was a very, very insecure man. And to be honest with you, I used to be very, very angry as a teenager and in my early 20s. See, if a person was to look at me in a certain way, I would habitually just assume this person is looking at me, they think I'm stupid, I would arrive at all these worst case scenario conclusions inside of my mind. Now, if you think about it, me arriving at all these conclusions, that was just simply me expecting more of in the future that which I'd experienced in the past. I think I shared in the last video or the video before that I was defined as being dyslexic back when I was young. So other boys and girls at school would call me stupid or call me thick or call me special needs and things like that. And I hated it. I never wanted to be thick. I never wanted to be stupid. But I started to doubt myself and I wasn't quite sure whether I was or whether I wasn't. So sometimes in life, we end up acting for the purpose of protecting ourselves from being hurt, all right, i.e. preempting a hurt from happening rather than actually responding to a hurt once it's happened. All right, and this is a place where many people function and operate out of in life, a real place of defensiveness, where people end up keeping their guards up, or putting their guards up, or hurting other people, or rejecting other people to protect themselves from being rejected. Hurt people. That's the idea here. So here's the thing. That's obviously not an effective way of living life. Why? Well, think about a conversation you've had with a person who's constantly on the defensive in life. They can be quite hard work to be around. Now, here's the thing. As CBT practitioners, as helpers or coaches, however you want to go on to define yourself, until a person fundamentally trusts you and knows that they can trust you to actually be there, present, focus on them and actually listen to hear them, they're not going to know what they can trust you for. And therefore are going to be most likely quite inclined to operate out of this place of defense, all right, or offense. So we've got to be open to this notion that all thinking patterns, all bad habits, they're not illnesses, they're not conditions, they're not diseases, they're not stationary, all right? They're all movable. And we can change everything. Anything the mind can do, it can also undo. If we assume that conditions and feelings and thought patterns are fixed, then there's no point us carrying on with this course. We might as well just shut up shop right now and go back to life. But the truth of the matter is that whilst we cannot always be in control or influence things happening to us, we can control and we can influence how it is that we choose to respond or react to the circumstances and the situations that we find ourselves in life. And in the sections that follow, this is going to become a lot more apparent to you. But this is just the core assumptions we're looking at here, all right? The attitudes that we want to be operating out of. If we are disagreeing with all of this kind of stuff, all of these ideas, let's be asking the question, why? What is it that you believe that is serving you better than this? What is your goal? What is your goal for currently believing what it is that you do about life and about people? There's a notion that in life, responsibility breeds empowerment, all right? We do not become empowered in an area or an aspect of our life until we've taken full responsibility for it. I think I mentioned a few videos ago, there was a lady that I worked with. I was counselling her for a couple of sessions, and I actually ended up stopping working with her on this one occasion. She came along, week in, week out, with this real a sense of expectation that I was going to fix her, I was going to heal her. She was of the mindset that she was broken. She was coming to me and she was paying me money. She was paying me to fix her. She wanted me to take responsibility for how she felt, all right, which wasn't something that I was physically capable of doing, and you aren't either. Every single person in the world is solely responsible for their thoughts, for their feelings, for their actions, and for their behaviours. And this is one of these realizations. When we come to this place in life, it kind of sets us free from ourselves, from other people, from needing other people to come through for us. We come to better identify and just acknowledge that we're actually all just a global community of imperfect human beings doing the best that we can. Every single person is solely responsible for their own thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviours. Now, if you think about how this one assumption is then going to inform our practice as cognitive behavioural therapists, well, if other people are solely responsible for their thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviours, then that means that our role isn't to fix or modify these thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviours, but instead, our role is to be that conduit of change who enables and encourages our clients to take more responsibility for their thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviours. Now, obviously, we have countless frameworks and exercises and tools that we can use to obviously aid this process, which we'll be sharing in later sections of the course. But this is an idea that we've got to figure out for ourselves whether we're willing to accept this or whether we're not. Think about your own life right now. Have you ever had a problem with an emotional disturbance going on inside of you? Albert Ellis once said that it's not events or other people that disturb us the most in life. It's just our thoughts that disturb us the most in life and our patterns of unhelpful thinking. So, when we take more responsibility for that which is going on inside of our minds, we will find very quickly over time that the more responsibility we take for this, the more this balances out, and the more effective we're able to be through our actions and our behaviours. So, idea number 5, or assumption number 5, we cannot control thoughts entering our mind. Right? They come from somewhere else. And that's just one of these things. If you ever find out or discover where thoughts actually come from, please get in touch and let me know. I'd love to hear what you discovered. But here's the thing. Whilst we can't control thoughts coming into our mind, we can control how we choose to act upon them. So whether we act upon them or whether we don't is entirely up to us. And this is a problem that kind of sticks many people in life. Many people in life assume and genuinely believe that just because they think something's true, that it is true. And it isn't. Thoughts are just thoughts. They come and they go. Feelings are just feelings. They come and they go. Beliefs are kind of like the best assumptions we've been able to come up with throughout our life to date. But the process of maturity is about growing up and out of the limiting beliefs that we developed about ourselves back when we were young and into something more grounded, into something more stable, into something more mature, into something that actually doesn't just serve us, but also serves other people through us, if that's even going to happen. So, what this means is that as CBT practitioners, our role is to help people examine their thoughts objectively, to critique those ideas, those notions that are going through their minds, and become better able to see how it is that the quality of their thinking is actually impacting the quality of their emotional experience. Because it's only when a person can see this that a person can then identify that it's up to them to take responsibility for changing. All right, we cannot change people's thought processes. We can't make people think positive thoughts or think, in a healthy manner. All right, this is the same as learning to ride a bike. All right, once we've learned to ride a bike, it's one of these things you never forget. Once we have learned how to manage our thoughts, to develop self-control, is one of these things that kind of stays with us for life. Self-control, mind management, is kind of like a muscle. Once you develop and stretch this muscle, it never goes back to its original form. It always stays expanded. And this is one of the fantastic things about personal growth and development. So, core assumption number 6. All people have the ability to choose a new set of habits, a new set of thought patterns and behaviours. And what we're saying here is that the past does not equal the future. Just because a person has succumbed to a certain set of behavioural habits or attitudes in the past doesn't mean they've got to stay the same. All right? If we are each responsible for our thoughts, our feelings, our habits, our attitudes, our actions and behaviours, because we are fundamentally responsible for our own lives, then that means that if we don't take responsibility for changing ourselves, for growing and developing ourselves, well, no one else is ever going to take responsibility for us in this way. And why should they? We're each in this world alone. All right, we're brought into the world by ourselves. We go through life. We meet a few people. Some people blow into our lives. They blow out of our lives. They blow up in our lives. They blow back into our lives again. And then eventually, at some point, we will blow out and we'll leave it all behind. So it's kind of like we all have a starting point, we all have an end point, and we all have this dash in between. And this dash is unfortunately what many people take for granted in life. All right, let's go back to the story that I started telling you about Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. the guy who spent years inside of these concentration camps, well, he could have allowed his experience to crush him as he was tortured and tormented and experienced his friends being tortured and killed, sometimes on a day-to-day basis. But instead, he chose to learn from his experience and also understand himself. He developed a mindset, whilst I cannot control all of these vicious, wicked, evil things happening to me, I can control how it is that I respond. And because he chose to learn through the experience rather than being crushed by it, once the World War II was eventually over, he ended up setting up his own psychotherapy practice and actually conceptualized what was referred to as logotherapy back then. Logotherapy was a process that he would guide other people through to help them make sense of their past histories and the past events, where granted sometimes some horrible things happened to us in the past, it's our choice as to whether we let these things crush us or whether we learn from them, to sometimes, perhaps, learn from so we can be more for other people than perhaps who we've had for ourselves. This can sometimes make life seem quite meaningful for us. We can allow life to crush us, or we can crush life. It's all down to attitude. And your attitude moving forward is going to be determined by whether you accept these assumptions, these attitudes, or whether you don't. All right? If you want to live life in an empowered way, then you've got to take full responsibility for the truth that your life will change in every single way once you've taken responsibility for changing. What's true for you is also going to be true for your clients. All right? So these are some big ideas, not commonly taught in school, but they need to be. All right? You could be one of those people who takes these ideas and impacts the next generation. So all people have the ability to choose a new set of habits, thought patterns and behaviours, but only once they realise that they can. Many people get stuck and trapped in this victim mindset. I have no control over things that happen to me, and I have no control over how I process these experiences, how I feel about these experiences. I'm just stuck in it. Will someone please come and help me? But when we realise that there's actually more than one way to look at an experience, then what we then also come to realise is that there's more than one way of interpreting an experience, where some people allow their experiences to crush them. Some people can use these exact same experiences to stand upon and build and base the rest of their lives on. Right? It's all about attitude. So the last core assumption of CBT that I want to give reference to in this video is the meaning of our communications are always going to be determined by other people, not by us. Now, we're going to build a communication skills section into one of the final sections of this course. But this is a really big idea, because one of the things that we very rarely do in life is consider how we're being interpreted by other people. Most of us go through life, we communicate, we say what we want to say, we will say what's on our minds, sometimes what's in our hearts, and don't always consider how our message or our attitude might be being received by other people. So this is actually, this one assumption, if we assume this to be true and accept this is true, then it really provokes us to be far more reflective in and through our communications, where we're not just thinking about what we want to say, but we're actually fully acknowledging that sometimes how we say what we say might become a barrier that prevents another person from hearing and receiving that which we're saying. All right? Look at how hard I'm trying to communicate as articulately and concisely as what I'm able to. All right? This is the best we can do in life. It's sometimes not what we say that determines whether we're heard or not. It's sometimes how we say what we say. So we've got to be aware of any personal prejudices, any biases, any beliefs that we are operating out of, any assumptions that we're making, because all of that, from another person's perspective, is going to be received as agenda. Our goal in every communication that we have is going to be heard, or it's going to be to hear. So when we embrace this as a truth, that the meaning of our communications are going to be determined by other people, not by us, then what this provokes us to do is observe the responses that we are receiving from other people when we are interacting with them. So if we're communicating with a person and the person is remaining closed towards us, or a person is perhaps getting angry towards us, or perhaps shying away, we can see that the person is being impacted by us in some way, then this allows us to ask questions and just simply mediate what's going on in the present moment for them. All right, where we want to be putting our own personal agenda aside and just simply focusing on where the client's at right here in the present. Because look, all people have the ability to choose a new set of habits, thought patterns and behaviours, which means that if we are met when conversing with a person with some sort of adverse response, then it's a learned response. If they're responding this way to us, there's a pretty high chance that this isn't the first time they've responded in this way. And if they are responding this way to us, well, when we approach the relationship from an objective, agenda-free perspective, we can unconditionally accept them, give them the time and the space to actually reflect upon and consider why they're responding or reacting to us the way in which they are. And this can, 9 times out of 10, lead a client or another person into all sorts of insights and places of understanding. All right. So these are the core assumptions of CBT. What I'm not saying is that these assumptions are universal truths. I'm not saying that they are facts. I'm certainly not saying these things for you to agree with me. But I'm also not saying these things for you to disagree with me. What I'm saying is they are healthy attitudes that we can build into our lives. All right, that's going to enable us to relate to other people far more objectively in a far healthier manner, if in fact that is something that we actually want to do. So these are the core assumptions of CBT. In the additional materials section, we've put together a resource that has those assumptions alongside a few more. I'm going to encourage you to spend maybe 5-10 minutes reading through the resource and just simply gauge your response to some of these ideas. All right? If you respond well to them, why? If you respond not so well, adversely to them, why? What belief is it that you're perhaps clinging on to that you're not yet ready to let go of? What area of your life are you ready to grow in? And what areas of your life perhaps are you not quite yet ready to grow in? These are the kinds of questions that if you can go there and answer first, is going to set you up as an authority to ask your future clients at some point in the future. So, I hope you found this video interesting, insightful, and I'll look forward to seeing you again in the next clip.